is Taimur Zaman from 8 Billion Acts of Innovation. And in this video, you get a chance to participate in a conversation I'm having with my friend Barry from Ottawa. Barry is one of the top leaders in something called autonomous cars. Barry, thanks so much and welcome for coming to the show.
Oh, thank you for the invitation. Pleased to be here.
Barry, tell me a little bit about Cars 2.0. I mean, who's got this thing called Cars 2.0? And specifically, I think you call it ACE vehicles. What is this and what should I share?
An ACE vehicle is an acronym. In the 2020s, we're going to see a lot of vehicles that combine autonomy, connectivity, and electric. And if you take the letters ACE, you get an ACE vehicle, and it's completely going to change the nature of transportation in the 2020s. And the way I look at it is 100 years ago today, the Model T Fords were coming off the production line. And we both know to what extent the cars changed everything in the 20th century, individual lives, our cities, our infrastructure, society, and the world as a whole, generally for the better, but not exclusively. And what we're seeing now is, and it's exciting to me, is a start of a new trend in Cars 2.0, which will be the ACE vehicles I mentioned, that's going to change everything all over again. It's going to change your life and mine, our cities, society, companies, government, and everything. A complete change of equal magnitude to the original cars 100 years ago.
I remember, I make up a number here, 10 years ago, I was having a roundtable and there was an executive at GM at my table. He said, if I had asked him 15 years ago, what business is GM in? He would have said, Taimur, we're in the car manufacturing business. 7 to 10 years ago, his business was, they're in the leasing business. That's how GM made money. It just happened to be that what they're leasing is cars. But now going into 2018 or even 2020, these cars, these car manufacturing companies, I'm not even sure if I should be calling them anymore, they're going to be a different business. What's this new business model?
The car companies like GM and Ford and others will be in two separate businesses. One of them will be transportation services, providing rides to people in driverless taxis. So if you want to go somewhere, you pick up your smartphone, you call one, comes to your door, takes you to where you're going, drops you off, and finds other customers. And Ford, for example, has said that they believe that transportation service business is worth 3 times as much money as actually making and selling cars.
Wow.
The other business is data. It's a cliche, but it's true that data is the new oil. And last week, GM's announcement about a new driverless car included a nugget that GM is now saying, that this is public, that the data that would be harvested by the sensors on a car can be monetized and would be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. In other words, multiple times the value of a car itself. So the real pot of gold at the end of the rainbow is not transportation anymore, it's data. And as I said, data is the new oil, and that's where a lot of people are going to make a lot of money. And that's why Google is so invested in all of this, because if Google can get hold of that data and monetize it, big data, analytics, all the technologies you're familiar with, then Google is uniquely positioned worldwide with its platform to use that information to micro-target advertising to each and every one of us. And the more precisely you can focus the advertising, the more valuable it is and the more money Google makes. That's their business model. And GM, Ford, and others understand that.
Wow. Barry, I want to ask you a strategy question, and I would like you to help me connect the dots. The area that I want to ask you is around how business leaders, not always do we take the time to think how the actions and thinking of somebody else in a whole different world will impact my strategy. So let me give you an example. How many politicians in Washington ever imagine that a guy like Harry Weinstein's actions would ever impact their career? Like nobody ever saw that coming, right? So I want you to connect the dots. What somebody does in a whole different industry, how does it impact my strategy? Autonomous cars will impact how governments operate. You know, how many mayors do I know today who go to work thinking, how's the autonomous car going to impact my career? Not a lot of them think that way, right? Or how many taxi drivers in even third world countries going to work today? I don't think a lot of them think about how's the autonomous car going to impact me today.
No. You're right. And one of the things I find fascinating about this whole area is it's going to affect so much. It's a huge, broad impact. In the private sector, a lot of different businesses are going to be severely disrupted, such as the parking industry, auto insurance. As we move to electric vehicles, the oil and the pipeline industry will be disrupted. And they're already talking about, some futurists are talking about the end of the oil industry as we have known it for the last 100 years. Because so much of the oil is used for transportation. It'll affect other things like public transportation, obviously. And it'll help people who are handicapped, but also government. A while back, I was talking to a policy person in one of the provincial governments, and she told me she has realized that AVs are going to have an impact on virtually every department in every level of government across the country.
Give me an example. Can you give me an example?
Healthcare.
Okay.
Let's take healthcare. It's well known that for young adults between 18 and 30, traffic collisions are a leading cause of death.
Okay.
Now, what's less well known is if someone who is a young adult, 18 to 30, if they were healthy but die suddenly, they are a very important source of organ and tissue donations. Therefore, on the one hand, if through technology we can save all those young lives, that's wonderful, society benefits. However, there'll be a lot fewer hearts and lungs and kidneys and eyeballs and so on, and skin tissue for older people who need those organ and tissue transplants. So older people will suffer while the younger people benefit, and it's going to have a big impact. 25% of the people in emergency room trauma wards are there because of traffic collisions. If I'm right, and we can prevent a lot of traffic collisions, we're going to decrease the workload on ER departments, which is going to save a lot of money on hospital budgets.
Wow, that's interesting. Thank you. So what are the top 3 questions business leaders should be asking themselves that they're not asking themselves right now from your perspective?
For business leaders, first is to determine how will autonomous, connected, and electric vehicles impact my business plan.
Okay, good question.
And business model in the 2020s.
Okay.
Second, given that, how should I modify my business model and my business plan for the 2020s? And let's realize the 2020s start in just 2 years' time. General Motors has announced that they will be mass producing driverless taxis in 2019. And after a period of testing, we will expect to see the first commercial deployment of driverless taxis in North America in 2020. So the future is really very, very close. And it takes a while for companies to work through all of the calculations. And what they need to do as well is, I think, start at the top. And one of the things we do emphasize is once you're talking about business transformation, you really have to start with the board of directors, top management, and help them to understand that this is going to happen and you need and should do something about it.
I am a late adopter. If you ever read the book Chasing the Chasm, I don't even show up on the graph. I'm a Canadian guy, okay?
Okay.
What advice do you have for me for rapid adoption of my strategy around this area? Autonomous
Um,
vehicles.
I, one of the things we talked about when I talk to companies to address that question is there's no single answer on the back of an envelope, but there's a process. And we do recommend that they brief top management about what's happening and make sure the board of directors, top management understand that this is coming, it's going to have a big impact, and it's important to find out the answers.
Mm-hmm.
We've also, for a number of companies and governments, we've conducted in-house workshops where we in fact get middle managers, we brief them, and then we have discussions, we have breakout groups to really figure out in more detail, and we drill down into what it really means for the company and what are some of the things that can be done. And another thing we do for a large corporation, we did this a while back, is they have 15 different business lines. And we did a SWOT analysis of each of the 15 business lines to decide how it will be affected by AVs and whether there should be something that should be have more focus in the future, or should be less focus and maybe phased out, or keep the same. And that was very successful. And in fact, they liked the results. So they invited us to talk to their executive committee. And they are now one of the top companies in the AV business in the world.
Nice. So assuming I hire your firm or whoever to help me do SWOT analysis on my 15 business units, I've got you into my executive committee. I'm ready to implement something. I don't know what it is. I want to implement something. What are the skill gaps? What are the commonly skill gaps for companies that want to take advantage of the autonomous vehicles business model?
It depends upon the business, obviously. One of the things, if it's a company that actually wants to be into the supply side of the business, there's really a shortage of software, hardware developers, and it's very technology intensive. At the moment, if you buy a brand new car, the value of the technology is roughly 4 to 5% of the value of the car. By the mid-2020s,
it's going to be 90%.
Well, I say between 40 and 60%. Okay. And there's a lot of technology there, and you need people to develop that and test it, and that's an important skill gap. In terms of the deployment side, the skill gap is that companies need to understand that their world is going to change. They need to be open-minded. And one of the examples is the auto insurance industry. In the last 18 months, I have spoken at 6 different auto insurance industry events. And I've told them that starting gradually in 2020, their business model will start to get broken and to fall apart. And I explained there are 3 reasons for that. First, my prediction and others is that with autonomous and connected vehicles, we can reduce the number of collisions and deaths by about 80%, not 100%, but 80%, which means with a lot fewer collisions and deaths and injuries, the payouts by the insurance companies go down. Therefore, the premiums must go down. Therefore, the industry contracts. That's one factor. Number 2, we expect as driverless taxis take hold that there'll be a reduction in the number of personally owned cars in favor of fleet-owned driverless taxis.
Sure.
Which means there's going to be fewer personal car insurance policies out there.
Right.
So another reason why the market contracts.
Right.
The third reason is that some companies like Tesla, Volvo, and Mercedes, and others in the future have already announced that they will offer liability insurance for life bundled in with the cost of a car.
Right.
The reality is the companies who make the cars and develop the software, they are likely going to be liable anyway. So the car companies who are forward thinking make a virtue out of that. It's wonderful. So if you take those three things, fewer collisions, fewer policies, and cars companies competing with insurance companies, a lot of disruption. And I've said to the insurance industry multiple times that the winners will be those companies, insurance companies, who can adapt, who can downsize, and come up with new policies, new products, new insurance products. Mm. Companies that cannot do that will go belly up, they'll go out of business. Mm. And it's taken a while for the insurance industry to understand that. But one of the people who agrees with me is Warren Buffett. And he owns Geico. And he has said on multiple occasions, if you Google him, that...
Carl Berry.
Yes. Well, he's also said that the autonomous vehicles will be bad for the insurance industry.
Sure.
And when I've spoken to these audiences in Canada, in the insurance industry, I get three reactions. First of all, they're stunned. Second, nobody has ever argued or challenged me. And third, the most common question I get is, what can we do about it? Mm. So it's that level of disruption. There's going to be a lot of disruption. Other industries, I mentioned healthcare. I've spoken multiple times to the parking industry. And if you, for example, have driver's taxis, which drop you off and then go and find other customers, they don't need to park downtown. They can park themselves anywhere where it's cheaper. And if, for example, you have your own self-driving car, depending upon where you live, it can drop you off and then go home and park itself for free on your driveway and then come back when you're ready for it. But it means, again, the parking industry will be disrupted and they'll have a lot fewer people parking. And the big question is, what do you do with all these parking lots and parking garages?
Barry, you've got enough curiosity, I think, right now my mailing list is 47,000 people. So if you don't get 47,000 phone calls, I don't know what to say. For people who want to get hold of you, how do they find you?
The best way is by email, and the address is bkirk@cavcoe.com.
Awesome. Barry, thanks so much for your time today.
Thank